a negative experience, or that I had some negative thing to proclaim. I felt the need to finally say something. Because once again, we are faced with the face of evil in our nation. And how do we respond to that? What is it that drives a person to commit such heinous crimes? The world would tell us that we need to remove certain items from our culture. And at the end of the day, we are putting a Band-Aid on a wound that is bleeding profusely.
That's right.
Because we're talking about the heart. We're talking about a human heart. And it's the heart that matters the most to God. What is it that brings a person to the point where they feel that the only solution is to take the life of another? It's nothing new. It was introduced to us in Genesis chapter 3.
That's right.
Cain and Abel. Cain was angry. And before he had done anything, God approached Cain. Gave Cain a heads up. Painted the picture real clear. He said, Cain, why are you angry? Don't you know that sin lies at your door? Was telling him, do not give in to that. Sadly, Cain chose poorly. And he chose to give in to that sin. And responded by taking the life of his brother Abel. What is it that drives a person to those places? There is sin at their door. And ultimately, they make a choice. Poorly, admittedly, to end the lives of others. I don't know about you, but I was kind of gripped by the face of the young man as he was brought before the court. There have been other faces of past tragedies where you've looked at them and you have somewhat seen the face of evil. But in the particular picture that I saw a boy that was lost. And my heart pained for him. I do not condone at all what he did. And I must admit that my initial response was to say, take him to the gallows tomorrow, hang him high. But then I saw that picture, and my heart ached. I go back to what I said a few weeks ago. Lost people matter to God, and they must be found.
Hallelujah.
It is a heart issue that we are dealing with in our nation. It's not a gun issue. It's not even a mental health issue. And I can say that with every fiber of my being. You've heard me say it before. I'm well aware of mental health. Do we need to do more in regards to mental health? Absolutely. That's not the issue. Because the underlying cause is that which needs to be dealt with. It is the heart of man. The heart of a man that is deceived and is desperately wicked. Where we get to this point in our culture that somehow the taking of a life is the answer. Is it not that we as a culture have bought hard into the lie that human life has no value? That human life has no purpose or meaning? That somehow we are here as an accident? Culture has bought hard into the lie foisted upon us by Charles Darwin.
That's right.
Through his hypothesis of evolution. And we began to see the culmination of what happens when life has no meaning or purpose, is an accident, and that only the strong survive. When in 1973, our illustrious Supreme Court made an ill-fated decision to legalize abortion. Life no longer had value in our culture. Every 96 approximately seconds, I'm not going to get it right, I just saw the video this morning, so bear with me. This sound, thump, 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 thump. That sound every 96 seconds goes from thump, 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 thump to beep. You work around the hospitals, you know what that sound is. It is the sound of a heartbeat that stops and flatlines every 90 seconds. I'll just round it to that nice number. Every minute and a half. A human being created in the image of God, bearing the image of God, with all of their unique faculties about them. Their hair color, eye color, personality traits is taken. Over the years, that number has amounted to over 55 million. Children lost to abortion. An entire generation has been wiped out. God is the one who created life. And to show the value of that human life, when we read the creation account, we read in Genesis chapter 1, everything else had been created. Now all of a sudden God says, let us make man in our image. And then with his hands, out of the dust of the ground, he formed Adam. That right there should begin to cause us to sit up and to take notice. Everything else, God spoke. Trees, here. Water. Land. Stars. Sun. Moon. The earth. A mere word, and it came about to be. But with man, to show each and every one of you how special you are. I get a kick out of this. I have a feeling that God was up there in heaven and he goes, hey angels, watch this. You've been watching everything else. You've seen me speak and you've seen all these other things come into existence. And if you thought that was good, watch what I can do with my hands. And he made Adam. But he didn't stop there. The Bible tells us that he breathed into him the breath of life. How fascinating to know that the breath that we breathe was given to us by God himself. He breathed. And life came about. And you're going, now wait a minute, how can you say that? That was Adam. God didn't do that to us. Wait a minute, does not Scripture tell us that he formed us, he knit us together in our mother's wombs? When you look at the miracle of life, and how conception takes place, and how a baby grows, and we go, how can that possibly happen? Would we not say that somehow God is indeed knitting together that baby in the mother's womb and giving it the breath of life as that baby is born? I've watched 3 of my own children be born, and every time we go, it is the miracle of life. Didn't stop there. That was enough to say that human life has value and is important. He formed it. He breathed into it the breath of life. He knit us together in our mother's wombs. But he didn't stop there to demonstrate how special each and every human being is. What is the Lent season all about? It's pointing us to the cross.
That's right.
God said, I love you. God said, I want to spend eternity with you. And because you are higher than anything else that has been created, because you mean more than the animals, you are higher than the angels, because you are the apple of my eye, and I love you, and I want to call you my son and daughter. To show you how special you are, I'm going to send my son Jesus to die on the cross, to pay the penalty that you couldn't even begin to touch. The The amount of debt that you owe could never be repaid in a lifetime. But I'm going to send you my son Jesus. That's how much I value. God's saying this. This is how much I value human life. But our culture has said we don't want you. We want prayer kept out of the schools. We don't want public displays of the Ten Commandments, nativity scenes, or crosses. And we turn our back on God and we reject God. I wish I could remember the author that I read after the events in Las Vegas, but I believe he accurately described evil when he said, evil is the absence of God. Evil is what we are left with when we have removed God from the picture. But life is sacred. It has value. So that is why we must be faithful in proclaiming the love of God. Because the human heart matters to God. That young man, Nicholas Cruz, he matters to God. All the lives matter, and they must matter to us. There's a lot more that can be said, I'm sure. I want us to have that glimpse of how special you are. God tells us that you are fearfully and wonderfully made. I was trying to find something from my notes here. Bear with me. Yeah, this was the first one. Acts chapter 17, verse 26. From one man he made every nation, and he determined the times set for them and the exact places where they should live. Think about that for a moment. Where you are and the time in which you are alive is not by accident. Even your home, where you were placed, is not an accident. God knew that the two individuals who would be the parents possessed exactly the right genetic makeup to create the custom you that he had in mind. You are not a mistake. We might be able to say that there may be such things as illegitimate parents, but there are no such things as illegitimate children. Many children are unplanned by their parents, but they are not unplanned by God. God's purpose took into account human error and even sin. And God never does anything accidentally, and he never makes mistakes. He has a reason for everything he creates. God planned every plant and every animal and every person was designed with a purpose in mind. And God's motive for creating you was his love. Ephesians 1:4 in the Message says, long before he laid down earth's foundations, he had us in mind, had settled on us as the focus of his love. Think about that. Again, why did Jesus go to the cross? It's because God had you. He had me on his mind. Now, if that doesn't make your mind just go, that some 2,000 plus years ago, God had you on his mind on the day that Jesus died. He was thinking of you. He knew that you would be alive and that you needed a Savior. And he had you. He had me on his mind. So in the wake of the events down in Florida, where do we go? How do we respond? Point people to the cross. We point them to Jesus. Is everything else? It's only dealing with the superficial. Because until we deal with the heart of man, nothing else will change. It is God that changes the heart of a man. It is God that changes evil and makes it into something good. That is what we strive for and fight for. People that want to debate in regards to gun control, listen, it's not about that.